Imagine walking into a room full of millionaires, men and women who think they know everything, who laugh at anyone who dares to challenge them. Now picture a 12-year-old black girl, with nothing but a backpack, standing before them. They laughed at her, mocked her, until she said 5 simple words that silenced the entire room. I speak 9 languages. What happened next left the millionaires in absolute shock. Ha ha ha. The sound of laughter wasn't just loud, it was sharp, cutting, and filled with mockery. It bounced off the tall glass walls of the skyscraper office, echoing through the room like thunder. The city skyline glowed behind the massive windows, but inside, all attention was fixed on the man at the head of the long, polished wooden table. That man was Mr. Richard Harrison, a name feared in business circles. With silver hair combed back perfectly, a tailored navy suit, and a diamond-studded watch that glittered under the ceiling lights, he radiated power and arrogance. Known for his ruthless deals and unforgiving nature, Harrison was not someone easily impressed. Around him sat 4 other millionaires, men and women dressed in expensive suits, their postures confident, their smiles smug. Crystal glasses of water sat untouched in front of them, and thick files lay neatly stacked on the table. They weren't used to being questioned, challenged, or interrupted. But today, their meeting had taken a strange turn. Because standing across from them, small in size yet unshaken, was a young black girl. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old. Her clothes were simple, jeans, a red t-shirt, and a backpack that looked almost too heavy for her slim shoulders. She had no jewelry, no expensive gadgets, no sign of wealth. And yet, she carried herself with a calmness that no one in that room could ignore. For a brief moment, the room had gone completely silent when she walked in. The executives exchanged puzzled glances, some frowning, some smirking, all wondering the same thing: what is a child doing here? Mr. Harrison had broken that silence with his booming laugh. His laughter was not warm, not friendly. It was the kind of laugh meant to belittle, to humiliate. He slapped his hand on the table, his face red from amusement. You? He scoffed between laughs. You walk into my boardroom, interrupt my meeting, and expect us to take you seriously? This is a place for millionaires, for people who make decisions that change the world, not for children carrying school bags. The other executives chuckled politely, some even covering their mouths to hide their grins. One of them leaned over to whisper, "What is this, a prank?" Another shook his head, amused. But the girl did not flinch. She stood tall, well, as tall as a 12-year-old could stand, with her dark eyes fixed firmly on Harrison. Her expression was calm, steady, and utterly fearless. She didn't shuffle her feet, didn't look down, didn't shrink away from the mockery. Instead, she took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and spoke in a voice that was surprisingly clear and commanding. I speak 9 languages. The words cut through the laughter like a knife. For a moment, the entire room froze. The millionaires' smiles faltered, their chuckles died mid-breath. Even Harrison, still leaning back in his leather chair, stopped laughing. His eyebrows shot up, his face a mask of disbelief. You what? He asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. The girl repeated herself, louder this time. I speak 9 languages. Her tone carried no arrogance, no exaggeration, only truth. The weight of her words hung in the air, challenging every assumption, every prejudice in that room. One of the executives shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Another raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering in his eyes. For the first time since she entered, they weren't laughing. They were listening. But Harrison? He wasn't ready to give up his mockery so easily. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his sharp eyes narrowing at the girl. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. 9 languages? He repeated slowly, almost as if tasting the words. At your age? Do you take us for fools? The girl didn't move. I don't take anyone for fools, she said steadily. But I won't let anyone take me for one either. The executives exchanged glances again, but this time, the smirks were gone. Something about her voice, her certainty, made them hesitate. They weren't looking at a scared child anymore. They were looking at someone who carried knowledge, confidence, and a strength far beyond her years. The room, which had once been filled with arrogant laughter, now sat on the edge of silence. The balance of power was beginning to shift, and though none of them knew it yet, this young girl was about to shake their world in ways they could never imagine. And so, in that skyscraper office filled with millionaires, the first crack appeared, not in the girl's resolve, but in their pride. The silence that followed her words felt heavier than the glass walls surrounding the office. Outside, the city buzzed with life, cars honking, skyscrapers gleaming under the sun, but inside, every eye was fixed on the 12-year-old girl who had just claimed something extraordinary. Mr. Harrison tilted his head, still smirking, though his laughter had died. 9 languages? He repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. Child, do you even know what that means? There are grown men with decades of education who can't master more than 2. And you expect us to believe, you speak 9? The executives exchanged uneasy looks. One woman in a sharp black suit crossed her arms, clearly skeptical. This must be a trick, she muttered under her breath. Another leaned back in his chair, shaking his head, whispering, ridiculous. But the girl didn't flinch. She stepped forward, placing her small hands on the edge of the polished wooden table. Her backpack slid slightly down her shoulder, but she adjusted it calmly, her eyes locked on Harrison. It's not impossible, she said firmly. Her voice carried no arrogance, only certainty. It's not impossible when you grow up listening, reading, and loving words. While other children were playing video games, I was practicing how to say hello in Mandarin. While others watched cartoons, I was reading poetry in Arabic. And while some laughed at me for being different, I was learning how to debate in French. Her words landed like stones in a pond, creating ripples across the faces of the millionaires. One of the younger executives leaned forward, curious despite himself. Wait, you're serious, aren't you? The girl turned her gaze to him, nodding. Every word. But Harrison wasn't ready to back down. He chuckled again, though this time softer, almost defensive. Even if that's true, what good is it? You can parrot a few words in different tongues, so what? Speaking languages doesn't make you rich. It doesn't make you successful. It doesn't give you power in a world like ours. The girl's lips curved into the faintest smile. She wasn't insulted by his words, instead, she seemed almost amused by his narrow vision. Maybe not, she replied gently. Maybe speaking languages doesn't give me gold or diamonds or private jets. But it gives me something much greater, understanding. And understanding makes me powerful. Because language connects hearts, opens doors, and builds bridges that money can never buy. The executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One woman tapped her pen against the table, frowning as if the girl's words had struck something deep inside her. Another man avoided eye contact altogether, staring at his watch as though it could distract him from the truth unfolding before him. Harrison leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, his eyes narrowing. For the first time, he didn't know how to respond. This child, this nobody in their eyes, was standing in front of him speaking with the kind of conviction that no amount of money could manufacture. The girl didn't stop there. She straightened her shoulders and continued, her voice steady but passionate. When you travel the world, what do you see? Hotels, business deals, contracts. But when I look at the world, I see stories. I see people, farmers in India, mothers in Nigeria, students in Brazil, each with a language, each with a voice. I don't just want to speak to them. I want to speak with them. And that is something money can never teach you. Her words struck harder than any business lecture. For the first time, the room full of millionaires wasn't laughing, wasn't smirking, wasn't dismissing her. They were listening. Really listening. The silence that followed wasn't like the silence of mockery from before, it was the silence of respect slowly forming, though no one dared admit it yet. Finally, one of the executives cleared his throat. His voice was hesitant, unsure. But, why? Why go through all that? Why burden yourself with so much at your age? The girl met his gaze. Her answer was simple, yet powerful. Because knowledge doesn't burden me. It frees me. And in that single moment, the weight of doubt in the room began to shift, not away from her, but away from themselves. Because deep down, they knew she was right. The air inside the boardroom grew heavier by the second. The millionaires shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, exchanging nervous glances. They didn't know whether to laugh again, challenge her, or simply stay silent. But Mr. Harrison, unwilling to let his authority slip, leaned forward with a sly grin. His voice was sharp, almost mocking. "All right then, little genius," he said. "You claim to speak 9 languages. Let's see if you can prove it. Because in this room, words mean nothing without proof." The other executives perked up, intrigued by the challenge. Some smirked, convinced the girl would falter and embarrass herself. Others leaned in, curious to see if she truly had the courage to back her bold claim. Harrison snapped his fingers, and one of his assistants, a tall man with dark hair, stepped forward. "You speak Spanish, don't you?" Harrison asked him. The assistant nodded, raising an eyebrow. "Good," Harrison said, pointing at the girl. "Ask her something complicated. Something a child wouldn't understand." The assistant crossed his arms, then fired a question in rapid Spanish. "¿Cuál es tu opinión sobre la economía global y cómo afecta a los países en desarrollo?" What is your opinion about the global economy and how it affects developing countries? The executives chuckled. The question was far beyond a child's comprehension. But the girl didn't blink. She stood tall, adjusted her backpack strap, and responded fluently, in Spanish, her accent natural and her tone confident. She not only answered the question, but expanded on it, giving thoughtful insights about trade, inequality, and opportunity. The room went silent. The smirks faded. One executive whispered, "Did she just?" But before anyone could recover, another millionaire jumped in. "That's just one language. Anyone can memorize a few lines." A woman in a gray suit leaned forward. "Let's try French. I speak it well enough." She turned to the girl and asked in smooth French, "Si tu avais le pouvoir de changer quelque chose dans le monde, que ferais-tu en premier?" If you had the power to change something in the world, what would you do first? Without hesitation, the girl answered in elegant French, her words flowing like poetry. She spoke of bringing education to every child, of creating opportunities for the poor, and of building bridges between cultures through language. Her voice carried not just fluency, but heart. The woman's jaw dropped slightly. She had expected hesitation, mistakes, but there were none. "Unbelievable," she whispered. Then came Mandarin. Another executive, eager to expose her, asked a question in crisp Chinese tones. The girl responded effortlessly, her pronunciation sharp and precise. One by one, the tests came. German, Arabic, Swahili, Hindi, Portuguese, Russian. And one by one, the girl answered. Not with simple words or rehearsed phrases, but with fluid, thoughtful responses that showed depth of understanding. Each language rolled off her tongue as if it were her own. By the time she finished, the room was silent once again, but this silence was different. It was not doubt. It was not mockery. It was shock. Pure, undeniable shock. The millionaires, who had entered the room full of pride and superiority, now sat speechless before a 12-year-old girl. Their smug expressions had been replaced by wide eyes and open mouths. Some leaned back in their chairs, stunned. Others looked at each other, searching for answers they didn't have. Even Mr. Harrison, the man who had laughed the loudest, had lost his grin. His face, once full of arrogance, now showed something rare, uncertainty. The girl stood calmly, her breathing steady. She didn't gloat, didn't smile triumphantly. She simply waited, her quiet confidence louder than any words she could have spoken. Finally, Harrison cleared his throat. His voice was softer now, no longer booming with arrogance. You really do speak 9 languages," he muttered, almost to himself. The executives looked at the girl with new eyes. Not as a child. Not as someone to laugh at. But as someone extraordinary, someone who had just shattered every prejudice in the room. In that moment, the test was over. And she had passed with brilliance. For several long seconds, the room remained frozen. The millionaires, once so sure of themselves, sat in stunned silence. Their laughter was gone, replaced by disbelief, respect, and something they weren't used to feeling, humility. The young girl stood at the end of the table, her backpack still hanging on her shoulder, her expression calm and steady. She had proven herself, but she wasn't finished. She looked directly at Mr. Harrison, then slowly turned her gaze to each executive at the table. When she finally spoke, her words carried more weight than all the luxury in that room. You laughed at me, she began softly. You doubted me because I am young. You dismissed me because of my skin color. And you ignored me because I don't look like you or dress like you. But remember this, intelligence doesn't come with age. Wisdom doesn't come with the color of your skin. And talent doesn't come with wealth. It comes from passion, dedication, and courage. Her voice was not angry, it was steady, calm, and firm, almost like a teacher correcting her students. The millionaires, who commanded boardrooms, who controlled empires, now sat like children being gently but firmly scolded. One of the executives lowered his eyes, ashamed. Another fiddled with his pen, avoiding her gaze. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the room. Why, he asked, his voice quieter now. Why did you spend all this time learning so many languages? What could you possibly gain from it? The girl smiled softly, almost sadly. Because I want to understand the world, she said. Not just the part of it that is rich. Not just the part that wears suits and counts money. I want to understand the voices that are often ignored, the farmer in India, the teacher in Kenya, the fisherman in Brazil, the grandmother in China. Everyone has a story, but too often, no one listens. I want to listen. I want to connect. I want to build bridges where others build walls. Her words struck deep. The millionaires, who had spent their lives chasing profits, suddenly felt small. They realized that for all their money, they couldn't do what this child could, speak to the world in its own voice. The girl let her gaze sweep the room once more. You think money is the greatest power, she continued. But money can be lost. Money can be stolen. Money can buy you comfort, but it cannot buy you respect. It cannot buy you understanding. It cannot buy the ability to reach into someone's heart and make them feel seen. The room was silent again, but this silence was different. It was heavy, humbling, almost painful. And in that silence, the millionaires realized they had just been taught a lesson worth more than all the money in their banks. The room stayed quiet, so quiet that the hum of the city outside seemed louder than ever. For the first time in his long career, Mr. Harrison, the man known for crushing competitors and humiliating rivals, was speechless. He stared at the girl, this 12-year-old with nothing but a backpack and determination, and felt something he hadn't felt in decades, respect. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Harrison stood up. His expensive chair creaked behind him as he rose to his full height. His gray eyes locked onto the girl's. The executives leaned forward, waiting to see what he would say. You've taught us more in 10 minutes than some people teach me in a lifetime, he admitted, his voice no longer booming, but quiet and thoughtful. And for that, I thank you. The words shocked everyone in the room. Harrison, the arrogant tycoon, thanking a child? It was unthinkable. Yet here it was, unfolding before their eyes. The other executives, one by one, began to clap. At first it was hesitant, then stronger, until the entire room echoed with applause, not polite applause, but genuine respect. The girl nodded, her expression calm. She zipped up her backpack and turned toward the door. Her job here was done. But before she could leave, Harrison's voice stopped her. Wait. She turned, her dark eyes curious. If you ever want a future here, Harrison said, my company will open its doors for you. We need people like you, people who see beyond money, beyond power, beyond pride. The girl smiled gently. "Thank you," she replied. "But remember, I didn't come here for your approval. I came here to remind you that no matter how rich you are, the world is still bigger than you." Her words hung in the air like a final lesson, a truth that could not be ignored. And with that, she walked out of the glass-walled office, leaving behind a room full of millionaires who would never laugh the same way again. Because that day, they had discovered something money could never buy, the power of wisdom and the voice of a child. And that day, those millionaires learned a lesson money could never buy, that true power is not in wealth, but in wisdom. If this story inspired you, make sure to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful and life-changing stories. Until next time, stay inspired.